Hello! Today I'm going to show you how to make the easiest tank top ever. It's literally two identical panels, stitched together at the sides, stitched together at the shoulders, done. It's also so changeable, like you can do double crochet like I did, but also single crochet if you prefer, triple crochet, like you can change it depending on what you want. But it's just super simple. I've also made it in black, which has, I don't know, a bit of a different look because it's black instead of green, but yeah, you can just really mix it up. I also did double crochet to finish off the edges on that one, but single on this one. You can adapt it, but I'm going to show you how to make it, and it's honestly just the easiest, loveliest little tank top. To make this top, I used a 4mm hook and 4 balls of 4-ply cotton yarn. The construction of this top is basically making two identical panels and then stitching them together. So we're going to make the first panel first. We're going to start with a chain of 60. This chain is going to determine the length of the side of the top, so this is from the kind of waist to the under armpit area. If you'd like the top to be longer or sit closer to the armpit, then you'll want to do more chains here. If you do increase the number of chains, just make sure to keep it a multiple of 2, as we'll need this for the gappy double crochet stitch. Once you've done your initial starting chain, we're now going to do one more turning chain, or 2 if you prefer a bigger turning chain, and then we're going to start working back down the chain. Skip the last chain and do a double crochet into the next chain along. This skipped chain and your extra turning chain will then become your first double crochet stitch of the row. And then we're just going to continue double crocheting down the row. To do a double crochet, you simply yarn over, push your hook through your chain, pull some yarn back with you, yarn over again and pull through 2 loops, yarn over and pull through the last loops. Once you reach the end of the row, we're going to chain and turn our work. I normally choose to do 2 chains when turning my double crochet rows, but here we're going to do 3 as we need 2 to act as a double crochet stitch, plus an extra chain to be the chain between our gappy double crochets, which is what we're doing on the next row. You then want to skip 2 stitches along as your turning chain is acting as your first double crochet stitch of the row, and then we need to skip another stitch to act as the gap between our double crochets. So then do your double crochet stitch in the next stitch along. Do a chain and skip a stitch. Then do your double crochet stitch in the next stitch along and continue this process of double crochet, chain and skip a stitch until you reach the end of the row. Once you reach the end of the row, we're going to chain twice to turn, as we're now doing a solid row of double crochet on the next row. So we don't need to do an extended chain that has the chain between stitches because there's not the chain between stitches on this row. But like before, you'll still need to skip the first stitch as your turning chain is acting as your first double crochet of this row. Double crochet into the next stitch along and then into every other stitch of the row as we're now doing a solid double crochet row. You'll then basically want to repeat these alternating rows for as wide as you want half of your side panel to be. So remember, we're doing 2 identical panels here, so this width of this side panel is just half of the width of the side section because your other panel will provide the other half. I chose to do a total of 4 rows here. Once your side panels are the width you'd like them to be, we're then going to chain more for the rest of the height of the top. I chose to do 40 more chains here. Once you've done your 40 chains, work back down the row, doing whichever style row is the next one in your alternating pattern. Once you've done your 40 chains, we're going to work back down the row, doing whichever style row is next in our alternating pattern. The style of double crochet you're doing back down this row determines the number of turning chains you do, as if you're doing gappy double crochet, you'll need that extra turning chain, but if you're doing solid double crochet, then you just need your normal turning chain. Continue crocheting down your chain. When you reach the side section of the top that you've already crocheted, start working into the top of these stitches like normal. So you should finish working into your chain and then immediately start working into the top of these stitches. And then continue crocheting down the rest of this row. Once you reach the end of the row, chain and turn your work. We're now going to continue crocheting alternate rows of double crochet and gappy double crochet at this new row length. You basically continue this process until the top is the width you'd like it to be, so I did 31 rows across at this new taller length. Once your top is the width you'd like it to be, we're going to repeat the side panel of the top. You'll want to finish your last row of this width at the bottom of the top so we can begin working up to make the side panel. So to begin the second side panel, you'll want to match it to the height of your first side. So I did 60 double crochet stitches for the height of my first side, so when working up from the bottom of the second side, I'll want to do 60 double crochets. Once I've done my 60 double crochets, I won't continue crocheting up the rest of the row. Instead, I'm going to chain and turn my work and begin working back down the row. Do this for as many rows as you want your side panel to be. Again, I did 4 rows as this is what I did for my first side panel. When you reach the end of your final row, we need to secure the yarn. I do this by chaining, cutting the yarn and pulling it through to form a knot. We now need to repeat this entire process to make an identical second panel. You can mix this up a little bit. I actually did my alternating rows in the opposite order on my second side, so that when I stitched the panels together at the side, they remained alternating. Also, if you know that you have quite a large chest to account for, but a smaller back, then you can adjust the width and make the panels completely bespoke to you. Once you have your 2 panels, we're going to stitch them together at the shoulders and at the sides. So we're going to start by slip stitching closed the shoulders. With the top inside out, so if you have a preference for the way your top is, make sure you choose that now, because with the top inside out, we're going to attach the yarn onto the edge of the shoulder with a slip stitch. We're then going to slip stitch across the top of the rows of each panel. I did this across the top of 5 rows. To slip stitch, you need to push your hook through the stitch on one side of the top, and then on the other panel of the top, pull some yarn back through with you, and then pull it through the loops on your hook. You may notice that we're actually going into the sides of stitches here, whereas when we slip stitch the sides together, we're going to be going into the tops of stitches. But it's basically the same principle. You just want to poke through the sides of these stitches, pull your yarn back and do your slip stitch. You might want to do 2 slip stitches for each row that you're passing over because double crochets are wider than slip stitches, but you also don't have to. I find that it still holds just as fine. So yeah, you just want to slip stitch across these shoulders. As I said, I did it across 5 rows. But if you want to do it for more and have a tighter neck hole, you can. If you want to do it for less and have a wider neck hole, you can. But just make sure that you have enough space to get your head in and out. Once you've slip stitched enough of your shoulder closed, you want to secure your yarn by chaining, cutting the yarn and pulling it through to make a knot. And then you want to repeat this process on the other shoulder. Once your shoulders are slip stitched together, we can move on to slip stitching up the sides. With the sides, I like to leave a little slit at the bottom, but you don't have to do this. You can fully stitch them closed if you prefer. To stitch the sides together, we're going to start at the top of the armpits, which is the top of our side sections. Attach your yarn back onto the work with a slip stitch. We're then going to slip stitch between the corresponding stitches on each panel to attach them together. We're going to slip stitch in the same way that we did at the shoulders, but this time we are going into the tops of stitches rather than the sides of stitches, which is what we were doing at the shoulders. But I actually think it's easier to do it in the tops of stitches. So you want to continue slip stitching all the way down the side of the top. You'll notice that on one side of the top, I'm going through each double crochet stitch, and on the other side, I'm alternating between going through a gap and a double crochet. That's because the end rows of the tops are the different styles of crochet that we've done. I slip stitch until there's 10 gaps at the bottom or 20 normal double crochets. You can slip stitch shorter or longer depending on how much of a side slit you want on your top. Once you've slip stitched enough of your side closed, you'll need to secure the yarn. So again, do this by chaining, cutting the yarn and pull it through to secure a knot. Now repeat this process on the other side, making sure to slip stitch the same amount closed so that the side slits match. Once everything is slip stitched closed, the top is basically done, but I choose to finish off the neck and the armpits with an additional row of single crochet. So at each of these points, you'll need to attach your yarn back on with a slip stitch and then work around each hole. So at the neck hole, as I said, we need to attach our yarn back on with a slip stitch, and then we're going to single crochet around all of the stitches. But as a single crochet is smaller than the height of a double crochet, I choose to do 2 single crochets for every stitch. You just want to do this around the entirety of the neck hole. Once you reach where you attached your yarn, slip stitch from the last stitch into the first stitch, then secure the yarn by doing a chain, cutting the yarn and pull it through to secure a knot. And then we're going to move on to the armholes. So again, you need to attach your yarn back on by slip stitching. You can choose any area of the armhole, but I tend to do it underneath the armpit so it's more hidden. Around the armholes, you'll mainly be crocheting into the tops of stitches until you reach the little side panels. So for every stitch that you're crocheting into the top of, just do 1 single crochet for each stitch, but on the side panels where you'll be crocheting into the sides of stitches, do 2 single crochets for each stitch. It's really not an exact science and you won't notice if you do miscount this a little bit, but as long as you roughly do this, you'll be fine. Once you've worked all the way around the armhole, slip stitch from the last stitch into the first stitch and then secure the yarn. Again, to secure the yarn, chain, cut and pull it through to form a knot. Repeat this on the other armhole. You can then weave in any loose ends and the top is done. Well, turn it the right way round and then it's done. Whenever you need to change onto a new ball of yarn, I recommend doing a magic knot. So to do a magic knot, you take your 2 pieces of yarn, with one piece tie a knot around the other, and then do the opposite way around. So take your other piece of yarn and tie a knot around the original piece. You should now have 2 knots, which you can pull together and make really nice and tight. Then either trim the ends or leave them long enough to weave in.